Hi, welcome back to part 3 in Sigfault's Beginning Java Programming. Today we're going to talk about kind of a lot of things. I wanted to jump right in. Excuse me. We're going to talk about just the assignment operator. It's called compares, different Boolean values, if-then statements, for loops, while loops, conditional statements, all these sort of things. We're going to let you give a good dose of some basic Java programming. And a lot of stuff is actually true in most languages. So anyway, we'll jump right in. We're not going to deal with classes or member variables or anything like that. We're going to just use everything in main. And so I named two variables here, I and j, and I used the assignment operator and assigned them the value of 0. And then I wanted to print them out to see what they were. You'll also notice there's an L in here that wasn't there last time, and that means line, print line. So it prints whatever's inside the parentheses and then puts a new line there instead of just printing it like we saw last time. So I'm going to print I and j, and then we're going to assign I1, and we're going to assign j3, and we're going to say I is equal to I plus j. So it takes these two values here, does the mathematical operation there, adds them, which is obviously a 4, and then it assigns that to the I again, overriding the 1. And then, by the way, in the assignment operator, it always does the value to the right first, just to let you know. And then, because it's actually a function call, and we'll get to functions a little later. It's kind of interesting. You can actually write your own functions that do similar things. You can actually write your own assignment operators. You can override a lot of different things. It's kind of interesting. Anyway, and so we printed that out. We're going to print it out here to see what it looks like afterwards, just to show you that it does actually assign the values. And then there's another way to assign values too. You can say I plus equals I, and I'll take whatever value of I that was up here, that was stored in it right now, and adds it to itself. So basically, effectively multiplying it by 2, right? And same here, I'm assigning I, or adding I to j. So it takes the value of j and adds I to it. And this this is actually the same thing as this up here. It's not any different. Excuse me. And then I print it out again. And so just kind of show you what's going on here. And we'll look at that in just a second. If you look up here, I already compiled and ran it. You'll notice 0, 0, right? And then 4, 3, because it assigns 1 and then 3 and adds 3 and 1 together, but it's 4, right? And then we assigned 4 more, because I is 4 up here. We assigned it again to itself. And then we assigned, so it's 8. And then j was 3. We assigned the 8 to the 3, which gives you 11, right? And then we printed those out. Okay, so there's that. Now we're going to go to if-then statements, or if-else statements, depending on how you want to say it. Basically, what they are is they have a Boolean value, true or false, and if it's true, then you do the statement inside. So, for example, if statement here, right? If I is equal to j, you notice a different operator here, equals. This is the assignment operator up here. It assigns whatever value on the right to the value on the left. And this is a compare. It says, is this equal to this value? And it's a truth, 0 or 1. If it's true, it returns a 1. If it's not true, then it returns a 0. And there's different compares for different values, and we'll get into data type compares and all these sort of things a little bit later. You can actually compare different data types. You get true values and false values, because the function's overridden for different data types. And you can write your own function for different data types too. Anyway, when you write your own classes and data types later. And then if that is true, then you do everything inside this curly brace. And obviously it's not going to be true. We've already looked at the values, so it won't be true, so it's not going to do it. But if it was true, it would print the value of I plus 10, the value of j plus 10. And this is called a concatenation operator. And anytime you're in curly braces, you can actually do you can actually run operators inside the parentheses. And only certain data types can do certain ones, like integers and floats and stuff can be added to other values. And strings, actually there's a string down below. I'll show you that you can concatenate. I'll show you that. So if this is not true, then it runs this one. So if this one was true, it would exit out of the if-then statement right here. So if this was true, it would say true. It would run these two statements here, and it would come out right here, and it would ignore the rest of this stuff. But we already know this is not true. So then it goes to if-else. So I is less than j, and actually I can't honestly remember what the two values were. uh, 11 and 8. So I is 11, j is 8. So I is less than j. So system out j plus 20. Well, j was 11. So you look at here, it says 11. Oh, plus 20, there's 31. So I did it. Okay. And the thing is these concatenation operators, it doesn't change the value. So even though it says j plus 20, it just returns a value. It doesn't change this j. It's not adding 20 to j. It's adding 20 to the total value inside these parentheses. So you'll notice down here when it prints out j won't have changed. Anyway, and then you'll also notice that this else statement, which this always runs, if these two statements don't run, then it runs this statement. But because this statement did run, it's not going to run this. But if this was false, like if I had switched this operator to a greater than, I is greater than j, then it would have run the else statement. It would give me I plus 20 instead of j plus 20. Anyway, and also there's all the statements are here. So there's equals here, and there's less than, greater than. You can actually do greater than, greater than or equal, or less than and equal, and less than and equal. And then you can also do what's called not equal, and that's just the inverse of the equals. So if they're not equal, then it's true, and it'll run the statement. So if I is not equal to j, then it would do this statement here. So we'll just go back to the less than, keep it the same. Okay. So now, and you can actually put more than one if-then statements too. Like you could, if you wanted to, you could say if I is greater than 0, right? And you could say if j is greater than 0. You could say system.out.println. We have positive values, yay! So if you wanted to do some tests on multiple things, you could do it that way, and that's actually pretty useful. We use that a lot in programming. That's the double if-then statements. So we use them a lot. Okay. So now we have what's called loops, and there's actually 3 types of loops, but we're going to only show 2 because the third one's kind of complicated, and we'll probably get into it a little bit later. It's called a do-while. And it's sort of the same thing as a while, but it does the first statement, and then if the while is true, then it goes back and does it again until the while is not true. And these statements can be a little dangerous because they can put you in what's called loops. So if this, like for example, while, if this is always true, like if I get rid of this I minus, we already know that I is greater than 0, so this will always be true. It'll just print this over and over again until you cancel the program. You have to terminate it, or if you don't have a way to terminate it, you have to turn your computer off. Which all modern computers have ways to terminate it, but if you didn't, you'd have to do that. So you always want to have some sort of exit statement to make sure that you get out of these while statements. But they are pretty useful. Like if you have some sort of value that you don't know what it's going to be, then you can put the variable in and then do operations on it until until you achieve whatever result you're trying to get. And while statements are really useful, but they can be very dangerous. Okay. The for statement. Now we have to talk about increments and decrements and the for statement. This is what's called a for loop statement, and what it does is it runs through a series of numbers, and you initialize the first number, which you can actually put a variable here too. You don't. The reason why I put it in here is because there is no k, but you could if you wanted to do like I equals 0 and then I less than 10 and I plus plus, right? But we're just going to use the k for right now. So the integer k is equal to 0, and then if the integer k is less than 10, then you increment I and you decrement j. So I subtract 1, or I'm sorry, add 1, and j subtract 1. Then you print them out, and then you do k plus plus. So it comes around and k is now equal to 1. And then k less than 10, it is, and then k less than 2, and it keeps doing it. It'll do it 10 times. That's what it will do. Because once k hits 9, and once k hits 10, it will be the 11th run, and it will kick out, if that makes sense. Because you started at 0. So anyway, that's how that works. And these you can actually do, if you wanted to, you can actually do a plus plus I. What that does is that adds before the I is used. So like if you're it's really rare, but there are times that is useful, where you want to add to it before you use it, or you want to add to it after. Like if you want to check the value and then add to it, it'll check the value first and then add to it, or other way around. So it can be useful. A lot of the times this is done back to back and there's nothing done in between, so it doesn't matter, but it can matter. And then this is the while statement. I think I already explained this one pretty well. So basically, whatever I starts at, because it's incremented 10 here, so it's always going to be, as long as it starts above 0, it's always going to be a positive number. And it just decrements until, it'll print out I and j until I is no longer less than 0. So once I are greater than 0, so once I gets to 0, it will stop running this while loop. Okay, now we're getting to conditional statements and complex conditional statements, and these can be a little tricky. They're the same sort of thing as the if-then statements elsewhere, but they have multiple statements, and you always have to have a conditional operator in between. And we'll explain what these two operators are in just a second. And there's more than just these two; it's just the ones we're using for right now. So this is I is less than j, and if that's true, then this half of the statement is true. Now remember, the entire statement has to be true or it won't run. So if I is greater than 0, if this is true and this is true, then this operation here is called an AND operator. And that says that both have to be true in order for this entire statement to be true. That's how that works. So if I is less than j and I is greater than 0, then it will do this operation. Else, if I is greater than negative 1,000, j is greater than 1,000. If these are both true, well actually, it goes from left to right. So if I is greater than 1,000, it goes to this operator, which is called the OR operator, and then the j greater than 1,000. So if either one of these are true, that's what the OR operator does. The whole statement's true. So if this is true and this is false, then the whole statement's true with the OR operator, and it will do whatever statements are inside the curly braces. And that's how. And you can do a bunch of these, and you could just keep adding if you wanted to. Whatever, I not equal to 2 or whatever. If this is true, then you just keep doing it. And you always want to have multiple parentheses between statements. Like here, you really kind of want to separate these. It's like you want to pick two that you want to do first, and put parentheses around those. So it'll do these two statements first, and then whatever value comes through here, it'll do with this value here. You want to add as many parentheses as possible. You want to try and have as few compares at one time as possible. Otherwise, the compiler will just go straight through and could act differently than you expect. And that actually is a big issue with software engineering. Computers acting differently than you expect. Even if your code's correct, if you don't understand how the computer's doing what's doing, with bit switching and how the ALU does operations on things and whatnot, which we can get into later, but right now it's not that important. It can cause big problems to their code. Even if all your code works perfectly logically, if it doesn't work right with how the computer works, then you might get weird stuff, output, and things won't work right. And anyway, and there's actually a big problem with binary numbers and not being able to represent every single number. And there's some stories maybe I'll talk about later about that. It's kind of cool, but kind of scary too. There's actually a mathematical operation they were using to calculate the trajectory of a missile, and because the numbers were so big and had such huge decimal numbers, the computer couldn't hold that big of a number, so it did what's called an overflow. And like, for example, if you're counting, and let's say you don't have a 10 spot, so you go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If you add 1 to 9, you get a 0 in the 1 spot. If you don't have a place to hold the 10 spot, you lose that 10 spot. So 9 plus 1 would be 0. That's called an overflow. And that's kind of what can happen. There's different sizes. I've shown you different sizes for data types. There's obviously much bigger data types, and there's data structures you can use to hold even bigger numbers, but there's also the problem with bit switching and how the ALU calculates numbers. But basically, it can cause problems. And so that's something you need to be aware of, and we'll get to that later. Anyway, the last thing here, kind of running a little late here. The last thing here is I want to show you the last concatenator operator for strings. You can actually take two strings and concatenate them, and it'll print them together. So we are space done. Look at the very bottom. I did not print. Oh, I put that in last. I'm sorry. Okay. Well, anyway, what it would do is it would print that statement. But anyway, that's I should put that in first. Anyway, I'm out of time, so I can actually show you next time. But that's my program, and here are some of the values if you want to maybe pause and check it for yourself, or you can probably just pause the video and rewrite this code and see how it works yourself, which I actually should suggest you do. I think one of the most important things you can do is just write code, even if it's somebody else's code. Just keep writing code, and you can learn a lot that way. Anyway, wanted to thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please like it. I'll see you next time. Thanks.